All right, we're ready to start. Welcome everyone to the Tree and Design Review Board meeting of November 26th. John, could you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Board member Level,
Present.
Board member Diedler,
Here.
Board member Balf,
Here.
Vice Chair Hanley,
Present.
and Chair Lingberg.
Here.
All right. We have 5 members here in attendance with 1 absence of Carrie Bush.
Great, thank you. We have some minutes to approve from last month. Anybody have any comments or discussion on those? If not, would someone like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
Could you tell us what meeting that was and who was in
It's
attendance?
October 22nd. I don't have the list of who was in attendance with me here.
It was Chair Lingberg, Vice Chair Hanley, Board member Diedler, Bush, Level, and Balf.
Everyone. So we have enough. We have a quorum to approve the minutes. If someone would like to make a motion.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Could I have a second?
Aye.
Second from Lan. Could we have a vote?
Board member Level,
Aye.
Board member Diedler,
Aye.
Board member Balf,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hanley,
Aye.
and Chair Lingberg.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. Moving on. Do we have any comments from the public on items not on the agenda? There's no one in the audience here, but anybody on Zoom for items not on the agenda?
Not seeing anybody with their hand raised.
Okay, great. All right. Any statements of conflict of interest from the board today? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our one agenda item, a hearing for the project at 7126 Healdsburg Avenue, a tree removal and design review issue. John, you want to give us your staff report?
Yes. So I do want to correct the address in there is 7621. It was noticed appropriately as 7621. The agenda is just typed incorrectly. So this is the design review and tree removal application from Kathy Austin on behalf of Pacific Realty for a residential project at 7621 Healdsburg Avenue. The project proposes 12 apartments and 12 townhomes, and also proposes the removal of 29 trees, 20 of which are protected. This project was first reviewed by the DRB in December of 2022 as part of a preliminary review where the project included a mixed-use development with commercial space on the lower floor of the building facing Healdsburg Avenue. The direction and comments from the board and as well as the Planning Commission was to develop a full residential project, which the applicant has done. This project was reviewed for a use permit and tentative map at the Planning Commission's August 27th meeting, where they provided a recommendation to City Council for approval. City Council then heard this project at their November 9th meeting of 2024, where they unanimously approved the project. The project is now here in front of the board for final approval of tree removals and design review. I'm going to pass it over to Kathy to give a little bit more on the project itself. But I also will note that Ben Anderson, the city's arborist, is here to answer any questions that the board may have about the tree removal component of this project.
Okay, any questions for John before
Yes.
we? Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead,
John,
Christine.
can you clarify, since the project has been approved, what exactly you're looking at in terms of comments and approvals?
So we're looking at comments and on the design of the building. So the colors, architecture, the stuff that's in our design review guidelines, which is laid out in the staff report, as well as the tree removal component of the project, which is required as these trees are larger than 10 inches in diameter. require approval by the design review board.
So when you say the project's approved, sorry, just want to be sure I understand, then it's approved.
The land use entitlements and components as part of the density of the project and the amount of units that are on site and kind of their rough location as part of their tentative map has been approved by the city council at their November 5th meeting.
Okay, thanks, John.
Any other questions for John at this point? Okay, so we could hear from Kathy, the project applicant.
Hi, thank you. John, do you want me to share my screen?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Kathy, that would be great. You should have the
Okay.
ability to do so.
Get this slide. Do folks in the audience, can you see this?
Yes, we
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm more used to John doing this part, so. Hello, I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I was there last week for all the rain. Hopefully nobody was swamped by the rain. I'm here today with our landscape architect, Sandy Reed, who some of you may recall, she and I worked together on the Barlow. She did all of the landscaping over at the Barlow and has really contributed a lot to this project. In our initial meeting, our very beginning, I took a lot of notes from the board and hopefully integrated most of those comments as we got into the site and fully developed the project. The screen right now, you see the existing conditions. You may note that on the Healdsburg Avenue, 2 trees fell down during the storms a couple years ago and had to be removed. But the view that you're looking at, slide number 1 there, is the existing condition. The building on the corner, and then a view on Murphy Avenue. We initially, my first pass on this site was to have our entrance driveway off of Healdsburg on the far east side. Unfortunately, the previous planning director, Kari Svanström, didn't agree and really wanted us to move it to the west, which we did and did all the engineering and submitted all of our plans. And then found out we had to do a traffic study for CEQA, which of course said, oh no, the driveway needed to move back to the east. So I had done an initial sketch of that for Planning Commission. And then this is the current tentative map where we have placed the entrance driveway onto the easterly side. We had initially shown a driveway that went all the way through and connected both Murphy and Healdsburg Avenue. Unfortunately, when we got into the engineering of that, it would have required cutting all the trees on the eastern side because the cut would have been very significant. And we would have had an extremely steep road of a 12% grade at the corner. So we determined that was no longer a feasible way of approaching the site. So instead, we worked with the fire department on an acceptable turnaround for the townhome portion on the southerly portion of the site and had the access for the apartment project on Healdsburg Avenue. And that's why there's 2 separate access points and there's a retaining wall between the 2. I have this particular slide up because I wanted to point out at the lower portion of this slide, you'll see there's a red line and that's the existing fence line. It doesn't correspond to the property line. And my hope is that should we get through this final approval, then my clients can approach the adjacent property owners about an easement where they could use some of our property and we can use some of their property to have a better rear yards for the townhomes in that area, because the fence is at the top of the slope and it's not a usable area for the property owners to the south. This was the initial landscape plan that Sandy did when we still had our driveway on the west side, but I wanted to show you the image of the retaining wall that she provided to me to kind of show the softening effect of her planting plan on that kind of retaining wall, and I'll let her speak to that. This is the revised version, and again, I'll let her speak to that when I get to her slides, but we have revised it to have the driveway back over onto the east side. This is a straight-on view for Healdsburg Avenue and Murphy Avenue, the new driveway onto Murphy Avenue. There's a setback on Murphy with plenty of planting, and then we have street trees and planters on Healdsburg Avenue. And because we were able to have all residential, the apartments on the lower level have nice big windows, letting in lots of natural light, and they each have an entry deck. But the accessible route of travel is on the other side, and it goes from Healdsburg on a sidewalk to the backside or the parking lot side of the building. So please don't take it as this is not accessible. It is fully accessible. We have an elevator, so both floors are fully accessible. This is a perspective. I think it shows it in a better, more explanatory site. And the parking in the rear is partially covered and will be uplit. Sandy has provided a great lighting plan that I think will be sufficient to provide safety, but keeps it dark sky compliant. So the units, there's two different sizes. The lower units are quite a bit smaller than the upper units. They're 590 square feet versus 740. But they're both one-bedroom apartments, and they're designed at a size that we don't see enough of. There's a lot of single individuals or couples that need smaller units in Sebastopol, and I think that these will provide a great opportunity for folks. And each unit has its own enclosed porch or patio, either on the front or the rear, depending on the level of the site. These are the straight-on elevations. I think that the side elevations are helpful to understand how the site begins to slope up. These are perspectives of the townhomes. For the first 4 units, we have to go up the slope, so they stagger up, but in no case does any roof exceed 30 feet above the grade. And what I had originally shown you all had 3 more townhomes in it than it does now. And so by removing 3 of those homes, I was able to widen each unit and also break the units apart so that there's only 4 in a row in each of the 3 clusters. And at the end units where we could, we've provided a full bathroom on the first floor for a universal design aspect. As I was explaining to commission and the council, I've had a hip and 2 knees replaced, and in my own home, the only full bathroom's upstairs. And so it's personal to me to be able to have a full bathroom on the first floor, should it be needed. And so we've done that in 5 of the units. This is just the overall floor plan of each unit or each cluster. Again, just straight on elevations. We have trees in the front of every unit. There's a 1-car garage and a 1-space parking space in front of each townhome. So each townhome has 2 parking spaces on site. And in the rear, we're providing a storage shed that also provides privacy between units. And we'll have a bike hook for bike hanging should the person decide to use it that way. Again, we can provide a small privacy fence, not very deep, between the middle units. These are the color schemes. I'm proposing hardy plank, stucco, a cement board siding called wood tone, and summer wheat for the vertical wood siding look, and then cedar plank for the enclosures of the private spaces. In an iron gray, light mist, and slate gray for the apartments. And then for the townhomes, the same look generally, but a little bit lighter, softer color, night gray, arctic white, and pearl gray, again with the summer wheat siding. They'll probably be either cement or Trex front porch entry. We're looking at long-lasting materials that don't require a lot of continuous upkeep and that are fire resistant. This slide is just kind of a pause point for me to ask you if it would be okay to let Sandy give her presentation on the landscape and then ask you questions, or if you wanted to ask me specific questions on the architecture and then go to the landscape. Chairman Langberg, what would you prefer?
I think you could continue with your presentation. We can ask questions after that.
Okay, great, thank you. And I can go back to any slide that you'd like if you have specific questions. Sandy, do you want to step in now? And just let me know when you want me to advance the slide.
Sure, go ahead. And why don't we show the first slide?
Okay, this is the first slide that I have.
But this is, we were seeing your plan. Do you have a slide of my sets?
Yeah, you're not seeing it? Uh-oh, this is okay, let me get rid of this. Okay, I'll start over another screen share. Okay, I'm trying to get used to this. Okay, does it show up now?
There we go.
Okay, good. All right, sorry about that.
Okay, all right. So this first plan just kind of shows the overall, mostly the tree planting, kind of the various types of landscapes that we have. So replacing those trees that we're removing was really important to us, and so we pretty much decided to go ahead and go for a larger tree. So we're proposing all the replacement oak trees to be 36-inch box sizes. We have 17, both of the live oak and the valley oaks, and they kind of provide the structure of the site. And so we're hoping to get them in this larger size. And then also the street trees and then the accent trees, that's what you're seeing here. So this is like the larger scale landscape. They are 24-inch box sizes. So our materials, we wanted to start off with some larger materials just to give a more immediate effect on the landscape. Go ahead and go to the next slide. I think we have more close-ups of each area. So this is the close-up of the apartments at the base. You kind of see towards the south part of is the parking area, and you'll see that I put some large oak trees there, and there's a wall that separates these two projects, and it's quite a substantial wall, as Kathy mentioned, and she showed in that one slide. And we looked at various configurations of having terraced walls coming up to the top level of where the townhomes are. But what I really wanted to do was to maximize the root space for some large trees. So rather than having a staggered walls, I requested that we engineer some taller walls so that kind of, if you imagine what Italian gardens are like, where they really take the walls and work them into the design, so that then I actually could have some substantial area on the bottom, not taken up by footings of walls, but by actually support for those large planters for these oak trees that are right next to the wall. The idea was that the landscape is quite romantic and lush, so that they were cascading over from the top down, and also that it's pretty full as far as a lush looking landscape, even though we are using drought tolerant materials and being pretty careful not to plant under the oak trees. Where you see on the right hand side, which is the east side, we pretty much are leaving, that's where the substantial area of oak trees are being saved. We're really just planting along the edges, the kind of brownish area under those existing trees that are not colored in. They're just an outline of the trees. I like to keep it mulched and pretty low impact there. Why don't you show the next slide? I think we have a little section. Actually, we're going up to the top. So the same thing for the townhomes. I really wanted to have some substantial planting areas for those trees that are outlining the drive, and those would be the live oaks and the valley oaks. So I wanted them to have enough space to get some good root growth going, get some good soils in there. We do have a somewhat, little formal kind of hedge landscape separating each little townhouse to give a feeling of more of a separation. But the idea again is that we have some pretty substantial planting on the north side to cascade over the wall, and also to create that sense that there is, separation from the two projects. This is just continuation of that. You see that we were able to connect the lower site with the upper site via these carefully laid out steps and a path to kind of miss the root zones of these trees. The idea was that you'd be able to, if you lived here, you could actually cross down and onto Healdsburg Avenue from the top. You don't have to go all the way around the block. We thought that was kind of a nice neighborhood connection also. And this little section was really just to show this, the relationship of the street. Healdsburg Avenue will be on the left with the little stoop going to the private patios of the apartments. And then as you go towards the back, we're using the separation between the parking and the pathway as where our bioretention treatment areas are. And the idea there was that, the cars pull up against that curb, and I planted some bioretention type plantings that would actually make some kind of a little bit of screen. And also there's a little seat wall there, can't quite see it, that you can kind of have a separation between the cars. Somehow the cars got whited out of my section, so I apologize. Supposed to be cars there. The drive aisles are that darker piece in the middle. And then if you look to the right, is where the wall is. And the idea here was that I would be able to have these large oak trees kind of shading the parking there, and also kind of bringing some scale to that side. And then I was going to plant out that wall, both with like a ficus vine on the wall itself. These would be slightly inclined geoblocks. And then the materials from the top would kind of cascade over this wall. And I was also going to plant some wisteria to grow along that railing at the top. And here's the plant materials, just I separated them out into kind of the general tree planting, the street trees across and the oak trees on the top portion there. With I think we were required to have the crepe myrtles as the street trees. And then crepe myrtles, other colors would be our accent trees. And then the bioretention planting will be is a grouping on the left-hand side, and then the right-hand side is the general planting. And you'll notice that some of the plants repeat themselves from the bioretention, just to kind of blend the whole site together, so that it doesn't feel like, oh, here's a retention area, here's this other kind of landscape. I really wanted it to kind of flow and feel in a kind of a garden-esque, Italian villa kind of feeling. And I think, yeah, here's we used various types of lighting just because we're trying to get more ambient kind of lighting, still have safety, but not have, large pools of light. And so that's the reason why there's so many different types of fixtures, because we do have different conditions as we go along. So that's pretty much it. I wanted to keep it brief for you so you can ask lots of questions.
I just want to add one thing, and you mentioned it, but the darker blue colors, those are bioretention, and it's intentional on my part for the ridge lines of the townhomes break as the existing contour, so that we're retaining the same amount of rainfall as pre-construction by letting it flow in the same direction. So just a quick thing to say that. Okay.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Nice to see you back here again. And any questions for our applicant? Len, would you like to start?
Yeah. What triggered the need for the elevator for those top 6 units of the small buildings?
It's my desire to have as much accessibility and adaptability as possible.
There's not a requirement. It was your decision.
Yeah, there is no requirement because we have accessible units on the first level, but they are the smallest units. And I felt that it was more fair to have accessibility to the upper units.
Okay. You have that long porch behind the front building, and you can't see what the bottom side of that porch is.
Yeah, it's going to be the same wood material, so it'll have a kind of a warm glow to it.
Okay. Are all these going to be rental units?
Yes, the apartment building is all on one lot, so it will always be a rental. It's not designed to be a condominium. However, I have designed the sound separation between units very similarly to what one would do for a condo, but the intention is to always be a rental. Whereas the townhomes could be rented out initially if desired, but it is a subdivision where each townhome is on its own lot and could be sold individually over time.
Well, I kind of missed something there. Can you just, so they will or won't be rental units?
The apartments will be rental units.
I got that, yeah.
The townhomes most likely, Lynn, will be rented out initially because with interest rates the way they are, the cost for purchasing one is still quite high. And there's a greater need actually for rentals in Sebastopol, but there's an opportunity for ownership. And it's really going to depend on what the economics are at the time that the project is built as to whether maybe some might be sold, some rented, a combination or all rental. Because I'm not the owner, I can't definitively say what the conditions are going to be when this gets built financially, economically.
Okay. You wouldn't happen to know what rental rates are going to be in the various units?
No idea. We don't know when this is going to be built, to be honest with you. The tentative map will last 2 years and there's a 1-year extension. So I would hope that they would get built within the next 2 to 3 years. But it's hard to say what the rental atmosphere is going to be at that time. But because they're smaller units, they would be more affordable than the larger unit. Even the townhomes themselves are 1120 and 1140 square feet. They're not large units.
Okay.
And we will meet the affordability requirement of the city. It's most likely, I would think, that we would tie up one of the apartments at 60% AMI. But there's a formula, as you may be aware of depending on the level of affordability, the number of units. It's either 1, 2, or 3, based on whether 60%, 80%, or 120% of the area median income. So whatever makes the most sense at the time will meet its requirement for the project.
Okay. You mentioned fruit trees. Could you tell us more about them? How many and where?
Sandy? I don't think we have fruit trees, do we?
We don't have fruit trees, no.
Okay, I misheard.
They're accent trees. I actually love planting fruit trees, but oftentimes in rental type properties, they're really tough to maintain and the fruit goes to waste. So we didn't propose any at this point.
Okay, last one is staff report said there's a color sample board available to see the actual colors. Is that here?
It's digital, Lynn. I'm sorry. What I can do is mail one down to you, but it wasn't possible for me to have a physical board for you. The images that I showed are very accurate, at least on my screen, but I don't have a physical board for you there.
Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Lynn. Any other questions for our applicant? Melissa? No.
I just have a couple. It's great to see this project back. I was curious if there was any site furnishings, art, or play structures planned.
No, there is an area for the bike racks that can also have a picnic bench area, but and in the past, I have used a bike rack that is somewhat artistic. At 961 Gramercy Highway South, I used an apple, kind of, the symbol of Sebastopol. It's a bike rack, but it's a giant red apple. That doesn't really qualify for art. So no, the answer is no. And there's no room for a play structure anywhere, and it's really hard to say whether there would be children at the apartments. There's Brookhaven Park is very close by, just up the hill and over a bit. So there's a playground very close by.
Great. What about site signage or development identification?
We didn't anticipate any monument type of sign. There will be ADA compliant path of travel signage. It will be very discreet, not huge, but it will direct people to the correct way for the accessible path of travel.
Great. Sandra, can you talk a little bit about the plants that are going to be growing up over on adjacent to the wall? You mentioned the ficus vine and the wisteria. Can you expand upon kind of age of plant, speed of growth covering that wall? It's a significant site feature.
Yeah, the ficus grows, pretty well. It probably will cover the wall in a couple, 2-3 years. We plan on putting larger materials, at least 5-gallon size materials for the vines. Wisteria we plant at 15-gallon size, and we plant them fairly close together. And then the plants on the top that would be cascading down, those would be at least 5-gallon material. I expect this, in about 5 years' time to be pretty lush.
Great.
Yeah.
And then the paving, the parking paving comes up quite closely to the oak trees that are proposed and certainly underneath the canopy. Can you describe the paving material and sort of proof of life of the roots of that oak tree?
Well, I think that we're just proposing asphalt for the paving, and the planter is quite large, and we'll be deep watering all of the trees, especially the oak trees, to get them started. So I don't expect both trees are pretty deep rooted, especially the valley oaks. I don't expect it to pick up the pavement at all. I haven't had any troubles with oak trees.
Okay. Can we ask Ben about that? Ben, can you just comment on the paving over the adjacency to the oak trees that are being proposed?
Yeah, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Would you like me to share the screen of the site plan? Would that be?
Oh, that'd be
helpful?
great. Thanks, Kathy.
Okay, let me do that. Oh, I have to open it up first. Just give me a second here. Can you see that? Does it show up?
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so the trees that are staying, all of them are identified in the arborist roll. A lot of them are identified in their arborist report as being pretty severely impacted. They're going to have a lot of root damage. And when I was on site looking at them, there's going to be a lot of pruning that needs to go on to create clearance from those buildings. And I don't know what the fire department is going to require for clearance. Sometimes they'll want clear to sky so that no branches are overhanging the roof, and more insurance companies are requiring that. And a lot of those trees that are on like the south line and to the west, they lean pretty strongly into the property. So they're going to require some significant pruning to clear those. And I think that potentially even more of those trees than what are shown as removals are ultimately going to need to be removed just to clear the buildings. And there's a tree in the southeast corner. That's that one. Yeah. It's enormous. And it has very large low branches that extend into the property that are going to conflict with where those buildings are going. And that looks to be a co-owned tree. So it's shared with the neighboring property owner. And it's just going to require some non-standard pruning to clear these buildings. And then the building's going to be pretty close, and there's going to be a bioretention area on that back patio that's going to go down into the roots. The next tree that's further north of it is entirely on the neighbor's property, or looks to be, and is also probably going to need some pruning. It's going to have some root damage. So, and there's a lot of removals that are already identified. Well, continuing down the path of describing all of the impacts, then further north from those is that little pocket of trees that are going to be retained. Those have a retaining wall pretty close to them that I'm not sure how tall that is. Does anybody know offhand?
I think that it starts about, it's 10 foot tall here, but then it goes down to about 5 feet in this area, I believe. And once you're done, Ben, I'll comment a little bit on some of the issues you've raised as well, since our arborist isn't with us today.
Great. Yeah, so that retaining wall is going to need to have an arborist involved, because the standard thing that happens in my experience with retaining walls on a construction site is they make that cut, and then they have to back cut it so that it's not this big vertical wall, because that's not safe. But doing that back cut to give it a slope off is going to cut into even more of those roots of those trees, so that's problematic. But again, it's all these things were kind of raised in their arborist report, but it's in a way that is kind of tougher to access because it's a bunch of numbers. I don't know if you guys looked at John Meserve's report or not, but it can be kind of tough to pull out all of the impacts and all the protection that he's recommending there. But I mean, this plan looks to me to be a plan that is really optimistic for how many trees are going to survive this process, and is going to involve a lot of input from the project arborist to keep them alive. And it's going to require neighbors being okay with some pretty significant impacts to their trees that are likely to shorten their life.
So if I could address a little bit of what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you, Ben. We are really hoping to save these. I did not mention in my part of the presentation that all the foundations are going to be drilled piers and grade beams underneath the root zones. And we would have John available as we do any kind of trenching in those areas. I have spoken to the owner of this property to the east, Billy, and he's very supportive of our project, and I'm sure we can work with him to come up with some solutions. I agree with you that this one tree may or may not really survive. Our hope was that we could try. It's interesting, I own property with my son in Santa Rosa in the Montgomery Village area. And my insurance company came to us and said they're not going to renew our insurance because we had trees overhanging our roofs. And that came as quite a shock to me. So I immediately had our trees pruned. It didn't hurt them. They were far enough away from the structure that it was not a negative thing for them. And I also had to put a brand new roof on in order to get my insurance to continue covering my home. And so that's something new for me as of this year. When we started this project 2 years ago, that really didn't seem to be an issue. I've done other projects where I've had buildings partially underneath existing oak trees and they've survived well, and it hasn't been a problem. But I agree that there's something that we need to look at a little bit more carefully. But I think that there was a question for you about the trees in the parking lot, and I wanted to zoom in on that a little bit. There was a question, I think, that that, what was it, Melissa had regarding the amount of landscape area underneath the trees. I don't know if you wanted to go back to that or not.
Yeah, I mean, sorry if I just launched into a whole thing of all the stuff I'm thinking about and didn't address the question, which is entirely possible. Yeah, those oaks in the parking lot should be fine. Oaks grow in parking lots really well in my experience, so I wouldn't worry about that at all.
Okay, well, that's actually great to hear. I appreciate that. So should I stop sharing the screen so you can see our faces, or do you want me to leave
No,
this
I
up
think
for a little while?
it's helpful to keep that up there.
Okay, I will keep it up.
Yeah, so Melissa, did you have any other questions?
Those are my questions. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry. I have one more question. Kathy, could you just describe a little bit more about the west elevation of the townhome on the entrance on Murphy Avenue? It feels like that building is sort of turning its back to the public face, and maybe that's intentional. You can just tell us a little bit about that sort of site entry moment.
So are you talking about the townhome one right here?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we don't really have the clearance. We'd have to dig into the hill tremendously to be facing onto Murphy. But I was hoping that the treatment of the unit itself would be attractive enough, and then also the landscaping there to soften it. And you know what? Why don't I go to that elevation? Should I do that?
That'd be
Yes,
great.
please.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
We're not seeing it, Kathy.
Yeah, I know it takes a little bit for me to do this, to switch. So pardon me.
You're doing a great job, though.
Well, thank you. Let's see. Okay. All right. Let's go to that. I think you're referring to this, Melissa.
That's
the one
right,
on the bottom here. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah. It's hard to see, but there is a window here and a shed roof. And I grant you, it's not the front of the building. The porch is visible from the side as you go, and it's not unusual to have a side on a street like this. I couldn't make it work. I did look at facing Murphy, and because of the clearance between the driveway and the property line, and then also the slope.
Kathy, the render is also not showing the trees that I had suggested there. There's a disconnect just because I had suggested some of the oak trees be planted right along that facade, right where you've got a blank wall.
Yeah,
And
there's more oak trees
there's
here.
a big oak tree there. Then where he showed little tiny trees to the right, I intend that to be a pretty large oak tree. So, and then there's a couple of, flowering trees towards the porch. So I had composed this with the thought that I wanted to have, the house as a backdrop for these trees. So the landscape will help it. I think the rendering doesn't do it justice, the landscape justice.
Let me put the landscape back on there and then.
Do you have further questions, Melissa?
I'm all good. Thank you.
Okay. Marshall, any questions? No? Christine?
Of course, I have questions. So I'm looking at your section page that has the landscaping wall.
Uh-huh.
You want to go to that one?
Yeah, I'm going to. This one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any, there's no numbers on here. So I'm wondering, what is the height of that retaining wall?
It's about 10 feet.
So the section that's provided in the set looks like it's more like 12.5 based on the grid scale that's provided.
Yeah, I think that was a conceptual sketch, and I think he worked out his grading. We're trying to get that road on the top as low as we could so that we could decrease this. I think this was probably an earlier sketch. We should go by the grading plan as to what that is. But I think the idea was that, we were, like I said, we were embracing the wall as kind of a structure for me to hang things from. So that was the reason for this little section here.
I would say from the grading plan that I've looked at, it's 10 feet, not 12 feet. Is that mixing? And the idea is also the fencing up here would be open, so we wouldn't be extending it as a solid.
Yeah, the idea is that those plants would fall right through that grading so that we could have a more garden-esque look to it.
Okay, so the wall is 10 feet. That was what I asked. So the,
Yeah.
And then the guard is another 3'6".
Right.
And can you describe what that guard is going to be?
Yeah, it's going to be metal with kind of a bronzy finish, for it to, essentially to kind of disappear between the branches of the plants that are going to be falling through it. I'm envisioning vertical pickets so that the plants can kind of go through it and fall off, and also so that those wisteria vines I'm planting will come and, we'll be able to use that as part of the trellising. In fact, we'll certainly attach the vine, to cables and things before it gets up there. But as you probably are familiar with, wisteria can be quite aggressive. But so the idea is that they'll be using that rail as part of its structure.
So the guardrail is a solid guardrail, or is it like, does it have
No.
cables, or like what, like it's got posts at certain spacing? Like what is the spacing?
It's a vertical pickets, and then, we'll have 4 inches openings. That's our requirements. And then the pickets, I've done one where we actually had the pickets down to about 1.5 inches with making it solid steel, so that it's a kind of as light as possible, and yet doing its job of being, it needs to be a guardrail. And so the top rail is not going to be a handrail type thing that you want people to go and, lean over the edge. It's going to be just a very simple structure. Think I'm thinking it more as a trellis structure for that vine to grow on. But I still am trying to make it as, and of course, we haven't engineered it yet, but it will be metal or steel, and making it as visually light as possible as a trellis kind of.
So it's going to have solid vertical members with 4-inch open spaces in between. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Right.
it's just less than 4, so a 4-inch sphere can't go through for code.
Right.
Yes.
Much like the pickets on a stair rail in a home, just verticals, but in steel.
So is it going to be like a painted metal, or is it going to like rust out, or?
It'll be painted.
Well, it can be anodized in a way so that it's not something that would easily chip or rust. It would be very rugged.
Yeah, I've had them made off-site, and then oftentimes they will just do the, I just lost the name of that.
Powder coated.
Powder coated. Thank you, whoever said that. So that it's a pretty solid. I don't intend really to have it be something that I have to come back and paint every few years. The idea is for it to essentially to disappear.
So you've got this backfill space behind the wall at the top, and
Yes,
and you're
be
planting proposed flowering accent trees.
Well, that's the small trees that you see there. And then underneath the trees, I'm planting shrubs that are essentially kind of cascading over the edge. And I wish I really should have, when I did this presentation to the client, I had quite a few images of plants cascading over walls. I don't know if you guys are familiar going into Central Park, where they have the bridges that go up in New York City. They go up over the cars go underneath. And as the cars go down, there's these beautiful shrubs that kind of go over the edge. And so that kind of cascading over the edge. And that's the image there. So, and that's why we've got a little bit of a setback from the road up above, or the driveway. So I can plant these little flowering trees and also the shrubs. Essentially, what I'm not inviting folks to come up to that edge. It's going to be fairly thickly planted out, so that if you're on the top, it will feel like there's, pretty much a edge of on the other side with your little hand there. It'll be the other side.
This is the walkway. This would not have people walking.
Right. I kind of want them to stay on the other side so that they can be pretty much planted out.
Christine, would you mind if I interrupted your questions for a quick question about the wall construction?
Please do.
What is the finish of the wall? Thank you.
It's a block. It's a precast block, not a concrete block wall, but those geostat walls that has a tiny little bit of a batter. The texture of the wall will be handsome enough going in, but my intention is for it to essentially have that ficus vine that covers it and makes it pretty much a green wall over time. It's an evergreen vine that likes to be in the shade a little bit, so it's kind of a ideal situation for it there.
So how far back from the wall are these accent trees?
They're right above it. If you see, they're, let's see, probably, they're just right up towards the edge, 3 or 4 feet.
I was trying to see if there's a way to zoom in. I don't know how to zoom in. Oh, I can zoom in.
So this oak tree so you show a guy standing below the wall on your section?
Uh-huh.
These are the trees that are planted above, Christine. You
Yeah, I
the
see
darker
those,
green?
yes.
Okay. And I'll
Yeah, I
go
mean,
back to
the root system is going to go into the drainage system of the wall for sure. It's like I'm kind of surprised that you would plant trees back there, but that's just a comment. So you've got that guy down below. I'm just trying to get oriented on the drawing.
Yeah, I'll get back to that drawing just one sec. Yeah, I need to. Sorry, here you are.
Yeah, there's a person down there.
Yeah, okay, so he's standing next to a shed. Is that a proposed tree?
Yeah.
So when you plant that tree, how big is that tree going to be?
That's going to be a 36-inch box oak tree.
Okay, well, so you have to educate a dummy. How tall will that tree be? Like how big will it be?
Well, let's see. It'll probably be, probably Ben can probably help me here. I would imagine it's going to be maybe 10 feet high. And then it's a oak tree that has a, pretty substantial planter in the bottom of it. So I think it will grow to be a good size oak tree, probably 40 feet.
So how long will it take it to get to be that big?
Let's see. I would say within probably 10 years, it should be fairly big.
40 feet in 10 years?
I planted some in Petaluma that we planted probably 10 years ago. They're quite tall. We planted some 15 gallons at the Barlow, in 2010, 11, and they're quite large already. So, I can't really say how fast they're going to grow, but the intention is that, we decrease the number of parking spaces there so that I could have enough room to plant some trees. So I was very pleased that I was able to get some good sized planters there. Were you seeing that tree?
Any other questions,
Yes,
Christine?
I do. I'm just looking at them. So the bike parking area, is that covered bike parking or is that just?
No, it's not covered.
No, Christine, so for the apartments, they would have room inside the apartments if they chose to put an expensive bike in there. This is more bikes for visitors, so it's a temporary type of parking situation. And then the townhomes themselves will have parking for bikes in the shed and their back patios.
Okay, so I have some questions about these bioswales. I'm looking at the little picture of the planting legend. I believe that's where the bioswales are shown on the sheet that has all the photos of the plants.
Yes.
Yeah, there we
Is
go.
this it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it shows on there the blue bioretention. And so that's, those other things on there that are turquoise, that's something different.
All the turquoise there are bioretention. That one that she just had her hand on is kind of a naturalized one. And there's another one that's over kind of where the oak trees are on the top right-hand corner of the site. Yes, so and then the other ones that you see right in front of the apartment, so actually between the apartments and the parking, those are structured planters, concrete planters that are treatment areas, and so that they are pretty hard edges, and so are the ones behind the houses. They're almost treated like little water features back there that are made out of concrete, and they take in the rainwater from the roof.
What do you mean
So-
made out of concrete, like concrete tanks, or like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, they're concrete walls. They're, structured. They're not like earthen sides like we have at the entrance there on the top or middle left-hand side. But these other ones are hard edged. They're
So
like,
I'm trying to visualize
But
this.
the
So
water filters through, Christine. It's not like a tub underneath. It's controlled, and then it percolates into the soil.
So it's like a wall, that the wall, like a bathtub, or like, where's the concrete?
yeah, it's like, well, unfortunately, we don't have the engineer's drawing, do we? It's essentially, it's like a curbs on the side. Actually, if you look at that section back again, Kathy, where the parking is, yeah, if you go right in there. So can you, or you can't zoom in for us to see that.
I can. Is that enough?
Yeah, that's enough. So see the sides are like straight sides. Like on the right-hand side is a little curb, and then on the left-hand side is actually a wall that I raised up so it can be used as a seat wall. So those are like concrete, preformed concrete walls that go straight down into the ground. And that in the area it's showing a little line at the bottom, but it, like as Kathy mentioned, they drain to the earth down below. But there's a certain amount of structure there that is various gravels, various growing medium that treats the water. So the water, like here, comes straight from the parking, drains right into these there's little cuts in that curb, drains in there, it holds the water for a certain amount of time, and then it treats it and then releases it into the ground. Like during huge storms, like we have oftentimes in Sebastopol, the overflow actually goes down into the storm drainage. It doesn't, obviously it's not going to hold a huge storm, but the engineer has sized these to the standards that he needs to for treatment during certain storms. So he's the one that essentially tells us he needs so many square feet of planters, and then we have to find spots for them.
So this is taking the water from the hard parking surface and then the rooftop?
Yes.
And then that goes into these light blue structures, and then we've got these turquoise structures.
I think
Or
they're
There's these things.
Yeah, it just depends what color. If you look at the bigger plans, they're dotted. There's just a little hatch on there.
Yeah.
When you look
So-
at the yes. So the one that she just showed you, like at the entrance to Murphy Avenue there, that's actually a earth inside, just a depression on the earth there, rather than having this more structured little planter type treatments on the back of the buildings.
So that's a swale then, basically.
No, it's
The
not a
turquoise.
swale. It actually is, the big one actually is a treatment. A swale just essentially gets water from one portion to the other. It's more like a ditch that takes things, that makes water travel from one point to the other. The bioretention facility is actually, contains the water, holds it and treats it before it gets, before it either goes into the ground or gets released during a huge storm.
How does it treat it?
Oh, good question. It's not my area of expertise. It's a pretty standard practice that if the engineer were here, he'd tell you. But
Well, there's different media that the water goes through, Christine, that filters the water. So if there's any particulates or any, it purifies it through kind of almost the way marshes do in a natural environment. There's plantings as well. But yes, I defer to our engineer. He did an entire big, thick book that he had to turn in on the water treatment system for this as part of our application. And it's available. John has it on file if you want to look at that.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating the way it actually works. It's, you know, especially the ones that are naturalized like this.
Okay, and then
And
I
it-
guess my other question, since you guys don't know the answer to that one, is the property line trees that belong on the neighbor's property. I guess I don't really have a question about it. I just have a concern about how those, and then after reading the report from Ben, it seems unrealistic that those trees are going to do well or survive.
Well,
So-
we're going to try. But I do agree that this one in particular that I have my little hand on is the most problematic and may need to be removed. I think that the others could be pruned in such a way that it would be okay. But like I said, we are in touch with the neighbor that owns this property and we'll coordinate with him. He's very supportive of our project, and actually I've put him in touch with our engineer to coordinate with him. So I don't have a lot of worries about it, but I agree that it's going to be a challenge. We are going to have the arborist on site when we're doing any trenching around the trees. It was our intention to keep them, and we'll do the best that we can. I've had success in a number of other developments, Christine, that I've done where we have been able to do this. The big wrench is the insurance companies coming back and saying they want branches pruned away from them. So we'll have to look at it very carefully. We set back as far as we could and made a design that worked as best we could in this north-south direction is very tight. To have a code-compliant driveway, private driveway, and a depth of the house that made sense, and rear setback along with parking. And then you can imagine that this direction is tough. But I think that we are doing our best to successfully work around the root zones, have an arborist on site, have an arborist there if we do any kind of pruning of the trees, and hope for the very best. And then planting large 36-inch box oak trees as replacement trees, given that. And, you know, we are also required to put, I think it was $1,200 per tree or $1,500 per tree on the trees that we're proposing to save to make sure that they do survive. And so we're doing everything that we can with regards to the trees.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. Do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I just wanted-
We're not in discussion deliberation. We're just asking
Right,
questions,
yeah.
right? So any more
Yeah.
questions?
No, I have a discussion.
Okay.
I've been trying hard to separate.
Right.
I just want to point out that I'm asking very simple pointed questions and getting these extensive wandering answers. And but I'm trying to,
Well-
I am trying to stick to just these few questions and
That's
points.
great. That's
So-
great. Well, the applicant has the right to
Well,
respond.
well,
so-
certainly. But I'm just saying, I'm trying to keep this lined up.
Great. Melissa, you had another
I
question?
just, one last thing, and I swear this is not the hill I'm going to die on today. But the section on sheet 2 of 2, there's not actually a sheet number, it just says 2 of 2 of the LACO, suggests that this retaining wall is not 10 feet.
Oh, what does it say?
It looks like it's 12.5 if I had to do a takeoff.
Ah, okay. Well, my initial view of their plan was that it was not. So my apologies. We've had to do a little bit of reworking on that. So on the tentative map, you're saying that page 2.
That's
I'll look
right.
at that. I don't have that with me to put on the screen, I'm afraid. I'd have to look.
I think
Oh,
it's the,
I do think I do. If you'd like me to, I could find it.
It's not going to change my.
yeah, I think it's just a
wondered-
point of clarification, Kathy.
Okay, thank you.
So I just have a couple quick questions before we move on. To clarify on the townhomes, one of your materials, it looks like one of the siding materials is a horizontal board and bat. Is that correct?
Vertical board and batt.
So
Horizontal siding and vertical board
okay,
and batt.
okay. And then the wood tone material it's not wood. It's like a cementitious material. Is that right?
This is correct. It is a hardy panel that is heavily articulated with wood grain, and it is a third party that stains. It's a variety, I think like a dozen different colors. And the winter wheat is as close to sort of the cedar tone that I wanted to use.
Okay, so it's actually a James Hardy, typical Hardy panel that's painted.
It's stained.
Stained.
Yes, and I do have a sample, but it's at my office. I'm so sorry, but it is. If you Google wood tone, you can see it online. It's a product that's very. They have a lot of imagery of it existing on different buildings, so you can get a good sense of the look. My intention was to not have a raw cedar that would have to be continuously maintained over time.
Right.
And also, the nice thing about the cement board is it is fire-wise, fire-resistant material.
Yeah, I think your drawings were clear. I just wanted to clarify the material. And then one last question on the parking. You talked about a garage space and a spot in front of the garage. Are those required? Were 2 spots required per unit, or that's just your design?
2 spaces, I believe, were required. They're 2-bedroom apartments. If they were 1 bedroom, we could do less. John, can you help me out on that?
1.5 for 1 bedroom, 1 for a studio, and then 2 for 2 and 3 bedroom.
So, okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Any other questions before we go to
I just have
public
one
comment?
more about the Hardy product. Is that through color, Kathy? So manufacturer finish on the Hardy products, not the stained cedar look, but the others.
The other, I have chosen the colors that they have.
Great.
It may be that, yes, those are from, so if you have samples, those are the colors that they come in. Yes.
Terrific.
Okay, any other questions for our applicants? So let's see, look out there. If there's any public comment on the project here, would you like to make a comment on this project? You can come up to the podium and let us know who you are. Is the microphone on there? Is the green light on below? Just push that button.
Hi, my name is Glenn Pinot. I live directly across from this project. Been following both projects for, as you well know, over 7 years now. I'm sorry that you have this hard for me to get here during the working hours. So just a comment. Okay, I don't know. This is the forum. I missed the city council meeting the night of the election. Poor timing on city council, putting the election night for a council meeting to discuss this project. This project has been an ongoing discussion, and currently the property is for sale. They're trying to flip the corner property, and I don't know who's going to purchase or this project that's being approved or has been approved. So if in fact a new buyer buys this, does it come back to design review board to, if they want to make adjustments to this? Or this is what happened with the first project. They came to the council, They put a project up, it got approved, then they sold it on the open market. They didn't vet the contractor. He had 2 previous bankruptcy and it went through a fiasco. It's been on that corner 7 years and now it's up for $3.5 million. And all this greenwashing that it's for the benefit of this community for, you're not going to build yourself out of affordable housing, but squeeze some more houses in here, folks. There was going to be 1 commercial building. They were coming back to rezone. See, I'm on my soapbox now
You have about
because this
30
is
seconds
a
left.
project that has had issues. So please do not rubber stamp it. Put out the microscope, ask the hard questions, because I'm fed up with the city and how they're approaching this property. And I'm going to be directly infected, and all my neighbors, because I live directly across the street from it. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments, Glenn.
Can I ask Glenn one quick question? Directly across the street on Healdsburg Avenue or what is it, Murphy?
Murphy.
I live directly on Healdsburg Avenue on the corner of Healdsburg and Dufranc.
Got it. Thank you. Are there any comments from the public in the Zoom world? Doesn't appear to be. Unless Jane wants to make a comment. Okay, thank you, Glenn.
I do not see any in Zoom.
Okay. Then let's bring it back to the board for deliberation. Anybody like to start with their thoughts, comments? Lynn, would you like to go? You push your button there.
Yeah. All in all, I think this is a fairly nice project, that it's well thought out and kind of an interesting design for sure. And there's certainly a lot of challenges in it. So I appreciate all that. There's just a few things that concern me, and they're simple. But one is the colors of the townhomes. They're very nice colors, except for this big, harsh white that you're using in it. And that harsh white doesn't harmonize with the rest of the colors. It doesn't harmonize with the neighborhood or tradition in Sebastopol. And it just looks like it needs to be grayed down greatly. So I'll stop there for now.
Okay. Anybody else like to go next? Melissa? Marshall?
Yeah, sure. Kathy, I just want to applaud you. I think this is a beautiful project, and I really appreciate you taking on the comments that we had in our last meeting. I think this project has come a really long way, and it's really well done. I really would be excited to have this in Sebastopol. I think my comments are really more about some of the tree aspects. I kind of wanted to raise to the board about this is like so far to the right of the decimal, but the white eaves versus a darker color eave, maybe that will calm down the facade a little bit. It's pretty minor detail, but just thought I'd bring that up. And then that west elevation of the townhome on Murphy, I'm pleased to hear that there's some more kind of substantial landscaping that will kind of mitigate that blank facade on Murphy. So I think that solves that concern for me, but that was something that from a design perspective. Otherwise, I think the design is really nice. And I'm not so offended by the white buildings. My house is white. I think it's okay. So I don't know that I would agree with that feedback, but certainly open to what my fellow members think. But yeah, I'm really supportive of the design of this project. I think it's really exciting. The one thing that I'd like to open up to our board is perhaps asking that the tree permit piece of this be resubmitted, acknowledging the trees that are unlikely to survive this and saying, look, these things aren't going to survive, and here's our plan for planting in place. So that the landscape plan is already in place with the 36-inch specimens to be planted in lieu of the ones that are not going to survive from the get. And we're not, hoping that they'll behave in good faith 3 years from now. Just taking a more realistic approach to the tree permit. That's it.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I want to jump in because my comment follows your comment.
Go for
Well,
it.
I mean, I have some other comments, but I'd like, while we're on this, to
Sure, go
So
ahead.
yeah, I'm concerned about these trees. I mean, it's nice that the neighbor likes to cut them down or whatever, but these are community trees, and under circumstances, they would be. I don't know which ones exactly qualify as heritage trees that would have to come before the board, but we have processes for those, and I think they should be treated as such. I think it must be. So as Melissa was saying, I mean, she had a good suggestion. I was going to suggest something along those lines, that we have to mitigate those trees because they're not going to survive. And so I think we should treat them as if they're not going to survive, and we should have a mitigation process as part of the overall tree. So actually, I'm with Melissa on the resubmit the tree permit portion. That's a separate board element anyway. And I'm not, super enthusiastic about the trees behind this wall either, because they're right up against a wall and they're going into the drainage zone behind the wall, which is going to affect the drainage of the wall. I mean, there's a lot of problems, I think, that need to be considered with planting a tree right up against a maybe 10-foot, maybe 12-foot 6 wall. And we don't know that. So that I'm heading into my, concern about that wall, because what is the height of the ceiling here? 12, that's 8, maybe 12 feet. So maybe that high with the guard on top. Yeah, with a guard, which is feeling like a fairly solid guard from the description that I'm seeing here. So I think that a wall of that size needs to have proper drainage behind it. It's going to have a huge footing, which is then going to affect when you go back to the section, the really plantable area for the new soon to be 40-foot tall trees. I mean, I think this stuff, I think the reality of this mitigation should be really considered so that we get the best possible result here, because I'm not confident that we're going to see what we're seeing on these pictures as a result of reality. And then we've got the colors. I guess we're going to be all over the map on the colors, but I find these colors, these gray colors, like on the Healdsburg front there, I find that really depressing. It makes me think about old concrete block, sort of Soviet style. The form is fine, but the color to me is just drab and depressing. I don't know how else to put it. So, I mean, I'd like to consider something, like, I'm not having a problem with the white, but it would have to be toned out so it wasn't so glaring, but I guess I'm just leaving it. I don't like the colors. I find them depressing. And I get that's kind of where I'm at for a start.
Okay. Marshall, did you have any comments or? No, okay. Well, I think this is a challenging site for sure in dealing with the retaining condition. And to me, the depth of there's the height of the wall, but the depth behind it is encouraging to me that you're giving lots of space to try and plant that will be a nice buffer between the two sites. And doing a tall wall to me is more interesting, a tall planted wall than a terraced or staggered wall. It's going to take up more space, and that has a completely different look. Like, to me, this will be a much more interesting look. And maybe the trees on top are not the smaller trees maybe are not necessary if you're going to have a 40-foot oak in front and smaller plantings on top of the wall. Maybe that combination would be enough. But I think the overall design of that is really nice. The overall design of the project, I think, is really, really well done. And yes, the losing big oak trees can be pretty heartbreaking. I do appreciate that you're planting fairly large oaks on the rest of the property as a future thought. But if these giant limbs of the trees on that east side are just going to be problematic, will those trees, just as everyone's saying, are they already doomed? So that's a concern. My only comment on the architecture, the colors I'm fine with, the materials are fine. I think the townhomes, to me, they're sort of part of a trend to me where every surface has a different color or material, and it becomes very like two-dimensional, whereas the form has 3 dimensions. So by picking a different color material, it becomes very patchwork, and the form could speak for itself. Literally, if it was all one color, or maybe the wood accent pops out of one color, it would be, to me, a more successful project than this kind of checkerboard look. I think on the apartments, it's a flatter facade. It works a little better there, but the townhomes offers you the opportunity to tone that down, let the form speak for itself. Exactly right. The facade is pushing and pulling, whereas in the apartment, it's sort of just the pop out that's changing. That would be my one sort of architectural related comment. So I think those are my only comments. I think it's great to see, as Melissa said, all the changes you've brought forward, Kathy, and it's a lot you're wrestling with on the site. I think it's very successful in that way. The trees are just sort of it's tough. It's an unfortunate ramification of a tight lot. So as a board, we could. I don't know that it needs to come back, but we could condition the approval that if those, the trees they're saying could be kept end up not being able to be kept, that then they have to plant X 48-inch box trees or whatever in their place. We could do it that way, or we could ask to, it'd just be a question to John, and could we ask to separate the tree removal part of the project as and continue that?
I would recommend adding a condition that the tree removal component come back before building permit,
before construction.
Mm-hmm. That way, when it gets a little bit further along the line, doesn't prolong the process any further. But if they're, in that time, if they're not able to save those trees when we get closer to that point, they can be reviewed again.
As part of that condition, can we ask that there be a formal agreement in place with the neighbor so that we have clarity about what they're willing to approve or not willing to approve?
I don't want to include that because part of the trees, because they are between 2 property owners, it's a civil issue between those 2. Okay. So typically the city does not get involved in those types of civil disputes. So I don't want to tie the project to, if another property owner comes in is complete opposite way, you're tying that condition to a potential future property owner. That
are we even? I'm concerned about greenlighting the removal of a tree that our owner only has a 50% interest in. Presumably the next door neighbor could come in for a tree permit saying, I want to save the tree, and we opine in the opposite direction. Like, how do we kind of legally provide direction on something like that?
Well, it seems to me they are saying the trees are staying now, right? So they're not being removed now. So the condition that John's suggesting to me makes a lot of sense, that before they move ahead, we get to review this once again. Mm-hmm. The ownership could change. The ownership next door could change. right? So we'd all rather see these trees stay. So if we just let the plan move ahead, they're staying for now. And then we have another chance to review that if we put this condition on.
Just to add another comment to that. So the issue is really, I think that the wish and the hope is that the trees survive. It seems like that may be a wish and a hope. So the question is, how do we mitigate the trees if they don't survive? Because if we were to ask for a removal, there would be certain mitigation,
Correct.
and that would have to be incorporated within this site plan
Correct.
because you have to add trees. So you could back yourself into a corner where you're hoping that the trees survive and they don't, and then you don't have anywhere to mitigate.
Unless we put a condition on the approval that it gets mitigated at that point, if that's possible.
Well, it seems like you would have to, on a site this tight, you'd have to have a plan for the mitigation, because I can hear what's coming. The trees get cut down and they just pay some money.
Yeah.
And we lose the trees and we don't get mitigation.
Okay.
Because
I do want to recognize Ben had his hand up real quick, so
Yeah.
if he has
please.
anything to add.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was just going to add that, the code says that there should be a performance bond for protected trees equal to either 1,500 or the appraised value of the tree. And because there were so many trees, I was thinking that the 1,500 per tree would probably suffice. But if we're worried about trees surviving, we could have, I could appraise them, or their arborist could do an appraisal of all of the protected trees to collect a bigger performance bond, so that it's not just they wouldn't just lose 1,500 for the tree. The weird thing about that is, because those two trees that we're kind of most worried about are so close to the property line, that really affects their appraised value. So they may not appraise for as much as they normally would. Like usually a really big oak tree like that that's healthy, that could be a $40,000 tree, but because it's on the property line, that really reduces that value. But it's still probably gonna be more than 1,500. So that's just another option.
So I think we have a lot of questions. So I kind of feel like Melissa's first statement about kind of removing out the tree removal part from this approval and getting these questions answered, continuing it, something to that effect. Seems to me, we just have too many questions unanswered.
John, first of all, so we could do that. Can we just can approve everything but the tree removal part of the application? Just to get that on the record.
Could I have an opportunity to speak, Chairman?
Sure.
Okay. So my think,
Can hear you.
John, are you
I
hearing
can
me?
still hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was
so
a
that-
little disturbing, but I had read that this happened at the council, so
It's happened
I'm
here
not
before as
surprised.
well.
Anyway,
That was a lot.
so Ben, I agree that this is an issue, and our goal was to save the trees. If we can't save the trees, we'd like to mitigate for it.
Yeah.
And
Can
we
use your
love
microphone?
trees. We want to try our best to save them, but if we can't, we would like to propose a mitigation. But given that we don't know when this is going to get built, the current owners are not developers. They're and they, I'm sure, are going to, once this is approved, try to sell the project to a builder, and that builder then would move forward and be able to work with the city on the tree removal.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy.
And the mitigation.
Thanks, Kathy. Marshall, did you have a comment? Can you go to your microphone if you're going to make a comment?
John, do you hear me?
Kathy, we can hear you. Can you hear
I
us?
don't hear you though. Sandy, can
Sorry,
you
she
hear me?
just, we're good now.
Okay.
She just muted real quick while that
But
was going
we
on.
heard everything you said, Kathy. Thanks.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
So we're just
I can't
we're
see you
gonna
guys,
bring
so-
it back. We're just gonna bring it back to the board here. Marshall had
Okay.
a comment.
Well,
I'll be quiet now.
I think it's obvious that, to me, and I think to most people here, that we have to separate the building permit from the tree situation, because there's such a thing as money and finance, and the building the project has to move forward, or someone could go bankrupt, and we can deal with the trees separately down the road, and that's always a major concern for me and my clients, is the financing and the progress and the timing. And if they're good clients, they work things out in a very professional way later on. And I think what we want sometimes isn't what's right, what should be done. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I had a kind of a question. So if this thing, okay, first of all, I'm not seeing that there's any serious concern or objection to the buildings themselves. It's the landscaping and the trees and the concern with the tree. So that makes me feel like a natural sort of separation there anyway. So, but what I was wondering is with the approval, because the tree report's already outdated, and with the approval, then how long does that approval stand before it expires, and how can it get renewed? Like if this got approved, let's just say we're approving this whole thing and the trees and everything and whatever they're planning to do, how long does that stand? Meanwhile, the trees are growing and changing or falling down, or okay, how does that work?
There's a 3-year period from
But
when.
then you can renew it.
Correct. But you have to go through a process to renew. So you can do a one-time 1-year extension based that the planning director can approve. If it goes beyond that point, it has to come back to the approval authority.
Because we have this situation where we've got these trees, some of them seem to be tipping precariously. We're calling them that we're going to leave them, but it kind of seems like maybe they need to go, because once we prune them, they're going to potentially fall on the buildings. And so it just seems like there's a lot, to me, of continued thinking that needs to be done regarding the trees and the mitigation and how that works. And so I'm all for approving the project as it stands, the buildings and the layout. And I don't like the colors, but if the board sees differently, I don't care. I mean, what am I going to say? But I think we need to spend some more time thinking about these trees.
But to me, what was proposed, and it's even mentioned in the staff report, that the arborist report is not up to date. So why can't we approve everything with the condition that a revised arborist report is produced? And so we can talk about it at that time, and we can get more, there will be more information with
Right,
that.
because the revised arborist report is not going to take into account the mitigation, the real mitigation, which is these trees probably aren't going to survive, and we probably are looking
Well,
at
we
mitigation.
can make that part of our condition. The arborist has to say what is he going to do with those trees in the corner if they die, or whatever the language is.
Right, I mean, we have to have something definitive, because we could have a proposition if they do the best they can, and then 3 years after they do it, the tree dies.
Right.
So there
No,
has
I
to-
don't think we can have that kind of language.
I'll just interject. That's the kind of goal of the performance bond component, is that there's a assessed value of the tree, or $1,500, that if, work is done, the tree falls over in a year or two time, and then it is the responsibility of the applicant to pay that bond that was associated with that tree.
And if
Okay, well, I'm
it's-
with Ben. I think the $1,500 value for those trees is absurd. I think
No, it's
substantial.
1,500 or assessed value. So
Correct.
Correct.
assessed by an arborist, it
So
could
it
be
would get-
40,000. It could be
But 1,500
50,000.
or, but it
Correct.
has to be assessed, and if it's not assessed, it's 1,500?
Correct.
But it has to be assessed. Like, how do you make that separation? How do you make it so it's not just, we'll just take the 1,500, we're not doing the assessment?
It's the discretion of the board, is if they want to, either if they are fine with the $1,500 value, or if you would prefer to have an assessed value from a arborist.
So in our current application tree report, there is no mitigations not really talked about. Performance bond was not talked about. Like this is just coming up now. So we can sort of put all of that into a condition for approval that the trees have a whole other round of work to be done. And we could, to Kathy's point, we could, can we condition it where that work should be done when the project is ready to move forward, so that if, in 3 years, 8 trees already fall over, we don't even have to deal with those trees. Like it could be a very different condition on site whenever this project is ready to move forward. So it's really a condition for the building permit in a way, for the next step of its process. Ben Anderson has his hand up. Ben, would you like to comment?
Can I just give us all a quick time check? We've got 20 minutes left.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, it's not letting me turn my video back on, but
Yeah, I took a lot of the controls away. Sorry.
yeah, no, it's okay. It's just been my experience in these situations when there's an approved plan set that gets purchased by a different developer, that doesn't work out very well for trees a lot of the time, because the new developer comes in and they're just someone that's trying to build a house and make a buck. And they say things like, well, these are the plans and they were approved and we were allowed to build it as approved. And they just kind of cut through whatever trees are there, and it just leads to a lot of problems. So I just want to I see that you're already cautious about it, but just put that as another note of caution, that whatever moves forward, we want to make it really clear that the tree situation is not settled, and that whoever buys these plans, if that's what ultimately happens, they don't have just a free pass to build those as designed, no matter what it does to those trees that are supposed to stay.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Well, the approval at this stage would still have to go to the planning department to move forward. So the planning department has the power to kind of enforce that condition. No, if we create a condition that there's a revised tree report, that has to be done.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not like we're approving a building permit at this point. We're just approving this stage of the process.
Yeah, which is kind of why either modifying condition number 10 to include the assessed tree value component of it is a potential path forward. Kathy, did you want to add something additional?
Well, I just wanted to say that in our building permits, we're required to put all the conditions of approval at the front of the building set, so it's very obvious what the conditions are. So it's not like just a separate document that someone could ignore. It's part of the building plan set, and so it would be enforced and also right in the front face of whoever is trying to develop this. But I'm liking where you're going, Chairman. I think if you wanted to modify that condition, but I think regardless, it's going to come back for the tree removal permit when the time comes. And I'm just concerned that it's going to be 3 years from now, and I don't know what the conditions are going to be out there on the site.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understand what Kathy's saying correctly. So she's saying that if it, like, let's say it gets developed in 3 years, they're still going to come back to the board for a tree removal permit?
If we condition it as such.
If we condition it as such.
Correct. The tree component of it would come back to the board before building permit issuance,
Right.
not construction. Before it gets a building permit issued.
Right.
Because that would be one of the conditions of approval that would be listed on the project set that's submitted to the building department. So it'd be on the planning department to enforce that
Right.
condition.
Okay, and I would be, in addition to that, I would like to see the real assessed value of the trees, not $1,500.
Yeah, as part, so we add the a performance bond is required with an actual assessed value of the trees, something like that. Make sense? I don't have the condition language here with me. But,
You know, I have a question
ahead.
on that motion.
There's no motion yet.
It's not a motion.
Not yet, but we're getting close. We have
Okay.
15 minutes.
Okay,
But yeah, go ahead, Len.
okay, you call a tree worth $10,000, and even somebody makes a best effort to make that tree survive and do well. They should, then they're going to have to pay $10,000 to put in a new tree there, or, you know, that doesn't sound fair.
Where does
It's only if the tree does not survive the construction. It's a bond that is held in place to ensure that the safety and the livelihood of that tree is contained. If the tree dies within a period of time, then that bond is due
So
for
it's
the.
actually in their best interest to say, we don't think the tree is going to survive, so let's get the approval to remove it and mitigate it as part of the planning process.
Absolutely.
Rather than
That's
like
where I'm going with
try to be
this.
cheeky about it. Yeah.
Mitigate it now. But that's up to the applicant.
Well, it's, yeah, or it's up to us how we condition it, right?
Right.
So again, if the project's not built for 3 years, the condition may change enough that the trees are different, the trees are fallen or whatever. So I think to condition it in that way, then whenever it does move forward, we have a chance to look at it again. So I guess it's from what I'm hearing, everyone's in favor of the project pretty much, and this issue is just a rewording of condition number 10.
Correct. I would say that the condition itself, as it's written, should stay. I'll read it off so everybody can hear it.
Thank you.
The developer shall provide an updated arborist report to reflect the current plan set. Tree diameters close to 10 inches should be updated to verify that they still do not qualify as protected trees. That is the end of that condition. So what our kind of modification to that would be, the developer shall also include a performance bond of $1,500 or the appraised value of the tree prior to building permit issuance.
And can we say performance bond of appraised value without the
Sure,
1,500?
yeah.
Yeah, I think that seems like that makes sense given
Yeah.
the size of these trees.
So performance bond of the appraised value of the tree
Mhm.
prior to building permit
Prior to
issuance.
building permit. So is there, I guess we still need a motion, but does everybody seem good with that language? Okay. Well, then who wants to make it a motion? Who'd like to fashion a motion? All right, you got another question, Lynn?
Yeah, are we going to make a motion to approve everything with that stipulation, total?
And that seems where we're at unless someone has other
I have just
concerns.
a minor comment, and
Okay.
it's that, and it's back to the bright white building. And, you know, we have, we call it, our city's master plan and our design review guidelines state that we should operate to harmonize the things that we do with the community. And you know, for just in the last 5 years, all these white houses, bright white houses, have been popping up along the entire Healdsburg Avenue. There are only 2 buildings that are bright white, and one of them is the newly painted bank that's up by Lucky's Market, Redwood Marketplace, and the other is the building at the corner of this project. Other than that, it's just almost unseen in this town until very recently. And this is part of the town core, and it just seems like, you know, let's not put something that's bright white in a town that isn't. And so I just ask that you tone it down a little bit, put a little gray in it, kind of thing.
Sushi Tozai is white and it's 2 doors down
And it's been white for 20 years, pretty
for
much.
forever. Yeah.
Let me ask you this question, John. So the building gets built, there's a new owner. I mean, Kathy's admitted they're selling it. There's a new owner, they build the building, they paint it these colors here, and then a year later, they decide, we're going to paint them a different color. What controls that?
If there's a substantial change, it can't come back to the board for review again.
And I'll say this happened with this development, right? Or I forget the name of this development, right? The
The Barlow Townhomes,
Yeah.
yes.
They
They
asked us
painted all
about
these
that.
crazy colors, and then the new owners come in and said, hey, nobody's buying because it's these crazy colors. We'd like to paint it white. Sure enough, full occupancy. So I think the market is speaking about the color schemes.
And I would add, it's not, if it was all white, that's one thing, but the wood accents are nice and it gives it a lot of variety. And the form, again, gives it variety. So that, to me, works as a whole.
Yeah.
I just want to, Ben has his hand up again. I just want to.
Ben has a color comment.
Yeah, well, I put it up when we were still talking about the trees. I didn't want to interrupt your color conversation. Just relative to the performance bond, I just wanted to make everybody aware of that we're talking about probably 25 to 30 protected trees that are supposed to be retained that would be subject to that performance bond. So even at the minimum of $1,500 per tree, you're looking at $40,000 or somewhere thereabouts of performance bond. So if we did because it's the appraised value or 1,500, whichever is greater, and some of those, a lot of those trees are going to be greater than 1,500. That performance bond is going to get really large. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that that was the situation before you put that on there. I don't know if you would rather have it be collecting that performance bond on specific trees that are identified in John's report, John, their arborist, as having like a certain level of impact or above, because he's got expected impact and it's a numerical value. So I forget if a higher number is a higher impact. I think that's how he works it. So maybe collect it on trees that have a 3 or higher or something like that, or just put the whole thing on there. But I wanted to make sure that you're aware that if you do the full appraised value of all of these trees, it could be like $100,000 plus performance bond.
Thanks for that, Ben. I personally was focused on these specific trees that are discussed in John's report and that are on the property line that he says are probably going to fail once we prune them. So I don't know if we can.
I like the 3 rating. I think that makes sense.
The 3 rating is how likely they are to fail or to die.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The 2 is like most likely to survive, but I'm forgetting the exact language. And the
Yes,
3 is like unlikely. Rating are poor candidates for preservation due to the very close proximity to construction or because located within the footprint of construction and cannot be preserved. And number 2 is rating with careful consideration and mitigation, but
It could
Yeah.
survive. How many 3s do we have? Do we know that? Or is that listed in John's report?
It's listed in
It's in
John's
the
report. Yeah, there's
So,
what,
so we
4
could,
of them
so
maybe?
the performance bond for
On those
trees
ones.
called number 3 trees, number 3.
He has
trees.
them numbered,
Yeah,
but they're the trees that we're talking about.
right. They're all this
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works. I think that's a
Yeah,
good
he's
idea.
got a total still of, I think it looks like it's 19 trees that, no. One
Go
sec.
back to the
I'm gonna
report. He
give
had
you-
he had the trees listed.
There are a total of 7 trees that he's got expected impact
Right.
of 3, but he does not call for removal.
7 trees can be retained with a significant impact. So,
But I mean, I'm not sure that I think there probably need to be more based on, I think his impact is root impact. And I think there's more in that little group that are going to be leaning towards the property and need to be pruned. So it may need to be expanded. And I think that an updated arborist report is really what's going to do that. If he
Yeah.
takes a look at it and we ask him to specifically weigh in on the lean of trees and how much is going to be pruned and get some clarification from the fire department what they want for pruning, he can come back with an updated list, and we could get performance bonds on those trees that are going to be impacted. But I think it's probably going to be somewhere between 10 and 15 trees.
So
It's still going to be a big performance bond.
thanks, Ben. I think the language of the performance bond isn't, it's or 1,500 or great if it's greater. So we could just, can we just put that it needs, a performance bond has to be a condition, and that gets determined what it is as part of the tree report? No?
Can it be at the board's discretion at the time of the tree report review? We can punt this decision.
That's what I'm sort of saying. We're just requiring a performance bond based on the rules of the city, and that as part of the new tree report, that gets fleshed out. Is that okay? Can we do that?
Yeah, I think that should be fine. Kathy, I see your hand. Is that you have?
Kathy, we have like 2 minutes left, so we're actually deliberating at the board level here and trying to finish this. So if you have a pertinent comment, please go ahead.
Just wondering if there was an opportunity there when we come back, I think given Christine's comments, if we really feel that some of the trees can't be saved, that we have an updated landscape plan showing the mitigation trees as an alternative to just doing all the bonds, but that may complicate things. But I just wanted some flexibility in there.
I like
Well, it's certainly right a question. If a bunch of trees are now gone, what's the site going to look like, and what does that change the design?
Well, and how are you going to mitigate it? Because you got to do more trees than you're taking
That's
out.
what
There
I
may not
mean,
be
yeah.
room for it.
How do we mitigate but how do we condition that?
I think maybe I think it all goes back to the tree report, because what I'm
Yeah.
reading here, the trees that I'm concerned about total 7 based on the arborist
Right.
report. So
But I think
I think we just have to, I don't understand why we're not just saying, can we say if these conditions aren't met, it comes to the board? I'm not saying exactly what those conditions are, but can we make a thing that says if these conditions are not met, it comes back to the board? So we've got the trees, we've got these, we need the new report, and then we've got these trees of extreme concern on this report, and I think they're legitimate. It's coming from an arborist.
But I still don't understand why, if we just ask for an updated report, we're not addressing all of our issues. Updated report with a bond to be,
On which trees, though?
on all the trees that are to be removed of a certain size. It's either 1,500 or assessed value. If we just put a bond as a condition to that, with that number to be determined later as part of the new tree report, we're covering everything as far as I can see, everything related to the trees.
Okay, yeah, so I think the nuance here is as such. So what Ben's suggesting is, like, we could have a tree on the site that's not, that it's getting a bond, it's getting a performance bond on it, and it's worthy of the $1,500 because there's really no likelihood that it's going to fail as a result of the construction. So we're just upping that to but it might have an assessed value of 40,000 because it's a big tree. So what we're doing is we're upping the assessment value only to those trees that have a high likelihood of failing, as designated in the arborist report, which I see 7.
So we're asking, so performance bond with
$1,500, except for these trees have to be assessed because the value is going to be higher.
Can you read the language of the performance bond again?
Let me pull it up.
Because to me, it sounded like it's not just like someone can get away with saying, I'm only going to pay $1,500 if the tree is a bigger tree. It's actually part of the language to be one or the other. Like it's part of the whole report would have to make that choice, not just say, oh, I don't want to pay that much, so I'm going to do the 1,500.
Well, see, because or is kind of a.
Well, that's why I wanted to hear it again, just to.
We're getting into legalese here, but.
Are we going to be re-evaluating all this when we get the new arborist report? This is all going to come, yeah. So can we, yeah, okay. So we're doing this
That's what
first
I'm
time
saying.
now. Can we,
Yeah.
not adjudicate this at this moment since it doesn't
So
matter?
the-
'cause
right.
So it says the amount of any bond shall be $1,500 per tree that is required to be protected by the provisions of this chapter, or the value of affected trees as defined in the most recent edition of the Council of Tree and Landscape Appraisers Guide for Plant Appraiser, whichever is greater.
Whichever is greater.
Whichever is
Whichever's
Okay,
greater, that's the
okay.
thing.
That
right?
was the part that I didn't hear
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, so can we go back to our motion, which includes this adding the tree report. We get a new tree report when the project is moving towards building permit, and we have a tree bond, performance bond added as a condition, right? I think that's where we were. Can someone try and put that in a motion for us?
I move to approve the project with the condition modified to include the requirement of a tree bond and a new arborist report prior to the issuance of a permit. Did I get it?
I'm just going to clarify it a little bit further. So the performance bond of $1,500 or the appraised value, whichever is greater.
Thank you. Yes.
And that is to be added to the end of condition number 10, which reads that the developer shall provide an updated arborist report to reflect the current plan set. Tree diameters close to 10 inches should be updated to verify that they still do not qualify as protected trees
And that happens, is it stated?
prior to building
Prior to
permit
building
issuance.
permit, right, okay, yeah. Okay, do I have a second on the co-motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, Christine second, can we get a vote, John? Or any further comments? Let's do a vote.
Board member Level,
Aye.
board member Diedler,
Aye.
board member Bell,
Aye.
and vice chair Hanley,
Aye.
and chair Langberg.
Aye.
All right, so that motion passes with 5 ayes. Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks, Kathy and Sandy.
Thank
for your
you.
work.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
So
Thank
we,
Thank you.
we have, can we take a quick little report from John, Planning Department?
Yeah, I don't have too much to report on additionally. We did have our Sustainable Transportation Downtown Grant workshop last week, I think it was, or the week before. I can't remember now. They're all running together.
It was a good event.
Yes, it was a great event. We had, from our counts, about 100 people or so show up to that event over the 3 to 7 p.m. timeframe that we held it at the Art Center. That is kind of the first of a few upcoming public events that we will have for that project. Our active transportation plan was presented to City Council last week. They did request us to come back with some additional comments and concerns that both members of the council and of the community had regarding a couple trails and then overall kind of scoring of that document. We have the final map for the canopy project scheduled for the December 17th City Council meeting. So that is moving forward, and then their building permit and grading permit are in review right now. And we are, I believe Jane has a item scheduled for the Planning Commission and hopefully a joint DRB meeting to go over the development agreement for the Barlow Hotel, which will be coming sometime
Right.
next year.
And the Community Development Director position?
Yes, they should be starting. They have an item that kind of finalizes their contract at the December 3rd City Council meeting. So hopefully Wednesday, December 4th, we will have that person
Oh.
on board and in place.
Can you
And,
tell us who it is? Or? Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
So we have to wait. Yeah. And yeah, so that's
Very
it
good.
as far as that. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Special board meeting on the 17th.
Yeah, so we did have another item that was supposed to be scheduled today. I believe Zuzi had messaged out to the group to see if folks were available for.
I didn't get that message.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think she did. She confirmed that we could make this meeting, but
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay. Well, we will continue, hopefully December 17th, because our next design review board meetings falls on Christmas Eve, and we are closed that day, so we will not be having our regularly scheduled meeting. So we were attempting to have a special meeting December 17th from 2 to 4 p.m. If I can finalize everything on the tech side, with the board, I know that we do have a couple of members that are going to need to recuse themselves, so I want to make sure we have a quorum.
Why don't we just, so who's in town on the 17th?
It's a tree removal
tree
permit.
removal.
Tree removal on West Street.
My backyard.
Yeah.
I'm recusing.
And then Marshall will also be recusing himself for proximity. So,
Proximity, so I can make it.
okay. Okay.
Lynn?
If
Okay.
it's not unethical, I'll bring cookies.
Yes.
Okay.
That would be,
And then-
that would be perfect.
I think we might be good with Carrie as well, but we'll have 3 for sure. So I will kind of move forward on hopefully getting that scheduled as soon as possible.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone. Meeting adjourned.
Recording stopped.